Medicine hat, my home, my heart. Sunshine City, where dreams all start. Gas City grit in every part. Medicine hat, my home, my heart.
This is a politically centered podcast.
Kevin Monson, welcome to the Politically Centered Podcast.
Hello, Jeremy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, face to face. As I said before I hit the record button, I'm really admiring your beard and mustache. It is a work of art.
Thank you. I do my best. Yeah, it's getting a little out of hand. I got to trim it here soon, but
well, yeah, wait 20, 30 years and it'll be down to here, and you can sport that big bushy Santa Claus beard.
Once I start seeing gray, I don't know. I will see what happens.
So, Kevin, tell me about yourself, because I really don't know much about you. A lot of the other candidates and incumbents I know personally from working with them, but this is the first time you and I have ever met and spoke.
Yes.
And other than the conversations we've had, so tell me a little bit about you personally. What is your, private life like? Just let the people get to know you.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm from MHAT, born and raised. Lived here pretty much my whole life. I've done some, my wife and I, we've done some working holidays in other countries here and there. So I've been away a little bit here and there, just do some traveling and things. But other than that, I pretty much lived here my whole life. I worked, kind of all around town, work experience wise. I mean, my first job was at the town theater in the Monarch. So I've worked there both before and after the renovations. I've worked a lot of front-facing roles. Like I've worked customer service. Like most of my jobs have been in like the service industry, whether that be tourism or recreation,
retail,
things like that. Retail, yeah. I worked at London Drugs here in Medicine for I think over 10 years, honestly, selling TVs and all that. But yeah,
I think that should be a requirement. I really do.
I agree. I think every single person should have to work either retail or serving.
It teaches humility.
I've done both. I've been a bartender and I've worked retail, and it's kind of a crash course sometimes, but I do think everyone should get that experience at least once. And sometimes you can definitely tell who hasn't, because it's like, okay. And
do you want to know what my first job was, Kevin?
Let's hear it.
I was a Walmart greeter.
Hey, so
you know what? You want to talk about getting the crap beat out of you and a customer service experience and breaking in the hard way. That was, yeah.
That is crazy to me, because it's like, that's the most like low. It's like, I don't understand how people could treat Walmart greeters poor. Like I could understand a little bit, like when I was selling TVs, people like, oh, give me a deal, or, blah, 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 all this. But you're just saying hi to people. That is wild that you would get treated poorly. That's pretty sad.
It's not the saying hi part. It's the stopping people on the way out part that they didn't like.
Oh, okay. What? That's okay. I can see why now. That makes sense, I guess. Yeah. I've got a very dynamic background. I've worked a lot of kind of odd jobs. Like I said, a lot of front-facing stuff, but I've also done some kind of more, I would say, blue-collar stuff. Like I spent a winter for a local company working on cell phone towers in the area, all over Alberta, actually. So yeah, that was a very interesting experience. Very, very cool in a lot of ways. Very not so cool in a lot of ways, especially during winter time on steel towers. Wasn't so fun sometimes. And then kind of more recently, my main kind of work experience in the last few years, I was the manager of a zipline and adventure park company in the Cypress Hills. I don't know if you've been out there. I was the manager out there for about 8 years. And my wife worked out there as well. We worked together. So we ran the business during it was a seasonal business, and then it kind of turned into a bit more of a year-round role for us when we started doing some of the hiring and stuff like that, social media. And then just recently, like I was saying earlier before you started recording, my wife and I just had our first baby just over a month ago. And so
congratulations. No, you didn't tell me that.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So it's been it's been an interesting month.
Boy or girl?
Boy. It's a boy. He's a boy. His name's Oliver.
Has he started destroying the house yet?
No, not really. I mean, diaper time can be fun sometimes. But other than that, no, it's been good. It's I knew this was coming. And so we've left the business out in Cypress Hills, and now I work at the college. She's a my wife is a part-time instructor. I'm a part-time instructor as well. And then I also work full-time in the library at the college. So,
Wow.
and yeah, so like I
You
said,
are a
kind of a
busy
lot of,
guy.
yeah, well, a lot of different, I don't know. I really do like learning new things. I like doing different things. I'm not the kind of guy that's just gonna, I don't know how people work the same job for their entire lives and not get kind of,
I'm the
stir
exact same way.
crazy.
I get it.
Which, I mean, I would totally respect that, people that, hunker down and work 25, 30 years at one company. But I really like adventure. I like to try new things. And so I'm kind of all over the place. I like learning new skills as much as I can. And so, yeah. And then I've always been interested in municipal politics, um, especially having our first son. I was like, you know what? I do think I could do a lot of good in the community and for this city, both now and
If
in
I
the
can
future.
summarize that for you, sorry to cut you off, but
No,
before you
no,
get on
we're,
to the next subject,
yeah,
is
yeah.
you sound like somebody who's never afraid to try new things. So you're very,
Oh, definitely not. You know what? These last,
regardless of whether it's a conservative or liberal term, you're very forward, progressive thinker in that regard. That's the impression I'm getting.
right? Yeah, definitely. Like I've these last few years, I've tried to do this new thing where every year I'm like, you know what? I want to pick up a new hobby or a new skill, try something new. A couple years ago, I picked up piano. I had never played piano. I was like, you know what? I want to learn piano. So I learned piano. And then last year, my wife's a figure skating coach as well. And I
Oh,
was like, you know
wow.
what? I'm going to learn figure skating. So I bought my figure skates and some people think it's kind of silly, but I was like, it's a lot more physical than you think. Let me tell you. And
I believe you.
I especially, when you're a kid, you bounce back after falling quite fast. I'm a little bit slower to get up sometimes, but no, it's fun. I really like trying new things, and yeah, like I said, it's given me a bit of a dynamic background for sure. But like I said,
You were talking
to
about why you wanted to run for council. So,
yeah,
and I was
yeah.
going to ask
So
that
to
anyway.
kind
Go
of,
ahead.
I digress. Like, so basically, I would say if I have a role that I find myself most comfortable in is I feel like I'm a good manager and a good leader, and I do think that I've got some good management experience, and I think I did really well in that role for sure. In terms of why I'm running, like you said, I think that, like I said, I think I can do a lot of good in this community. I think I'm a very capable person. I really like to learn, and I think that is really an important part of being a counselor because going in, it's great to have experience being like an entrepreneur or like whatever it is on committees in the community, things like that. But I think it's a role where nobody's going to go in as an expert on everything. Obviously, there's just too much information out there, too much to know. There's always new information. So I
No,
think you
there
need
are
people.
people who think they go in as experts, and I would suggest not voting for those
Well, well, I mean,
because being humble is important.
yeah, right. I'm the most humble person of all time. Yeah. No, just kidding. But no, I do think that,
Don't forget
it is
modest. Don't forget
right,
modest.
right. I'm
That's
so
right.
modest.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I think being a learner and being someone that it picks up information quickly and someone that's just has a general interest to learn new things is really important in a role like city council because there's always going to be a new project or a new development or a new goal for the city or new legislation that comes through. And I think that and I have learned a lot in my just the short weeks that I put my name forward. I've tried to learn as much as I can about as many issues as I can, as many kind of local initiatives as I can. But like I said, there's a lot of information out there, and I think that it's exciting learning all about the city. That there's, like I said, I lived for my whole life, and there's still things I learn every day about Medicine Hat that I didn't know. And I think that kind of would serve me well in council. I think, like I said, I think being someone that's interested in learning and someone that kind of strives to learn new things is important and necessary because it is definitely a job that would require you to learn new things on a daily basis for sure.
Right off the bat. I mean, yeah, in my opinion, you're saying a lot of the right things right off the bat is you don't come in and you're not telling everybody how it should be and you're not telling everybody how things should be. You're coming in with an
Yeah.
open mind and you're talking about absorbing as much information as possible and
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's tough. I mean, you know, and obviously I think that I have my own ideas of what kind of things we should strive for in the community. But people disagree with me, and that's okay. I'm a firm believer that in college I had a very good friend that I lived with, and our political views were very different, like basically polar opposite of the spectrum. And he was one of my best friends, and I think that's okay. I think there's a lot of partisan, I should say, politics, or almost like, I don't know, tribalism almost. And I think people just need to get back to being okay with disagreeing on things. As long as we have the same goal of making life better and more affordable for people and more, uh, accessible and just the better life in Medicine Hat, I don't see why there has to be this kind of toxic, environment. I'm very comfortable talking to people on all sides of the spectrum. And I think that being okay with people disagreeing with you is really important because, like I said, I got my own ideas. I think they're great ideas, obviously, because they're mine. But a lot of people would think they're, not so smart, and that's okay. You got to be kind of open to other people's ideas and
Yeah,
being
that's
able
well
to
said.
even just,
Everybody wants to be right, but it really is okay to walk away
mm,
and disagree with each other and not have it
well,
turn
and
into a
there's
battle.
definitely a
Yeah,
degree of compromise that's necessary, I think. And
absolutely.
there's no king of Medicine Hat. It's a council of nine, and I think that you definitely you definitely have to work together and not let relationships get too volatile and sour. Um,
Thank you for saying that, you because that was something I was going to say anyway. Is
yeah, well, I mean,
for anybody else watching, anybody voting, anybody else running, listen to that comment because, like I said, in my last interview, we elect you to get along with each other and work as a team. If you cannot be a team player and you cannot get along in a group, then don't run because
yeah.
this isn't about you. It's
Mhm.
about everybody.
Yeah, and and I think that is kind of speaks to the point you're making. Like, I do think that is a very important skill of counsel is obviously team dynamics, getting along, but just listening, like listening to people,
Yes.
because as I said, I'm not an expert on everything. I definitely am not an expert on all the issues in Medicine Hat. I try to learn as much as I can. But I think that sometimes council just needs to go to the experts in the community, whether it be a community initiative, or like a business venture in Medicine Hat. There's definitely people that are going to know a lot more than most people on council, if not
Can we
everybody.
say
So,
less ego and just sum it up? Because that's
well,
really
yeah,
what it
definitely
is.
less ego and just be
Yep.
willing to listen. Like, just
Yep.
listen to people. That being said, there is a lot of opinions in the community. That doesn't necessarily mean they're right. I respect people for having those opinions, obviously, but I definitely think there's a difference between being an expert on a subject and thinking you're an expert on the subject. So sometimes navigating that, I think, for council could be definitely tough. But I think it is pretty easy to find the people that know what they're talking about in the community and taking that into consideration when you make your decisions.
I think the challenge is learning enough about something that you still understand that you don't know enough to be an expert.
Yeah, well, my wife and I were just talking about that today. It's called like the Dunning-Kruger effect or something like that, where
Yes.
it's like,
Yep.
you start out knowing that you don't know anything, and then you start to learn a little bit, and then you're like, oh, I know everything now. And then it gets to a point where you realize when you learn enough about it, you realize, you know what? I didn't really know what I was talking about then. Now I kind of understand it more. So I think being aware of that is definitely important because I mean, and then there's some of the issues where there isn't a right or wrong answer. There's no there's two choices, and you can listen to the experts, but sometimes there's conflicting information out there and conflicting opinions on is this going to work, is this not going to work, and I do think that's one of the toughest parts of council is making those decisions, voting for the thing that you just feel that is the right decision, and then having to own that decision and saying, you know what, I with the information I had at the time, that was the decision I made. Maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong, but it's just doing your best to make the best decision you can.
Yeah, it's saying I'm sorry I was wrong is really difficult for a lot of people, isn't it? It's
Well, it is, and
some people don't have that ability. They just don't.
yeah, well, I'm married. I definitely understand that is important. But I think
Happy
that,
wife, happy life, I think is
well,
the comment.
as they say, yeah. But I think that obviously it can be a bit higher stakes with the decisions of council. It does affect people's lives, and people's livelihoods sometimes, whether it be their pocketbooks directly or just their quality of life. So, I think it is high degree of what's the word I'm looking for? Like it is a bit more. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, some of the decisions carry a bit more weight than others, I should say. So yeah, I think that it is tough to make those decisions sometimes, but you do have to admit when you're wrong sometimes. And even if it
Yes.
was a bit, tough decision, it's you just got to do the best you can with the information you're presented and try to listen to the experts as best you can.
So, biggest pet peeve, I guess you could say, something you really want to have brought up. I'm not gonna ask like what's the first thing you want to change because that's not realistic. I know
Well,
that that question gets asked, but and
it does,
it's
it
great,
does,
but
and I think that that's one thing that and I think most people understand that I've got big ideas, and everybody does running doesn't
absolutely.
necessarily like I saw somebody ask on one of the Facebook groups, what can you guarantee me? And some of the people were answering, it's like, well, as a counselor of nine, one of nine, I can't really guarantee anything. And people need to understand that. But I can guarantee I'm going to do my best. That's really all you can really guarantee. But in terms of getting things done, nothing is 100% guaranteed. You just got to have to go in with your ideas of what you want to see done, what you'd like to see done, and then try to get the votes to make it happen.
Please, to
I
the
would
general
say,
public, to echo his comment, stop asking questions like that because, as I've
yeah,
said during the previous interviews, as somebody who has been a politician on and off now for over 10 years, it's not hard to tell you what you want to hear and bullshit you. It just isn't. So stop
yeah,
asking questions like that when you're trying to look for one single answer.
yeah,
Because then you feel cheated and then you complain that your politicians
mm,
lie to you.
right.
But that you're setting yourself up.
Well, and that is one thing I'm learning. Like I said, I've never held a political office before or anything like that. I threw my name in because I thought I could do some good, and I thought I'm a very capable person. I feel like, and I feel like I can get things done. And that is one thing I'm learning that it is very easy to just kind of tell people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been some answers to some questions that I've answered both in person and online that people didn't love, and that's fine. And you definitely learn pretty quick what they didn't like. But I think you got to kind of own that. You got to own that people aren't always going to agree with you. But I do want to be honest with myself and not kind of betray my ideals. Like I could easily go on there and just tell people exactly what they want to hear, but I feel like there's some things that I believe that I don't want to lie to people. I want to make it clear that I believe in certain things. And to answer your question long-windedly, my kind of main concern going in, I've got a platform that I've posted. I will probably talk a little bit about that, but my main concern, and I think is a very common one among people, is housing. I think it's no secret we're in the midst of an affordability crisis and a housing crisis.
Yes.
We're, excuse me, sorry, I'm drinking bubbly here. Yeah, I do think that we are a bit shielded from some of that in terms of the housing prices are messing out. Obviously, we're a smaller city. We're not like Toronto or Vancouver where house prices are kind of really getting out of hand. But I mean, we're definitely not totally shielded. Like you look at house prices. There's like a house that sold maybe 2019, 6 years ago, and all of a sudden, in Manhattan, it's $100,000 sometimes or more
Yeah.
in price, and it's like it's great for the person that bought that house. That's great, but as a someone that is not a homeowner, uh, it's pretty daunting. It's trying to think of buying a house when the kind of general rules people talk about is you should kind of shoot for 30% of your income is what you should try to spend on housing. And it's kind of crazy because like the going rent in Medicine Hat right now, even if you're looking at something decent, I mean, you're looking at easily $1,500, and so as a single person, like if you're a single mother or something like that, it's like for someone to earn, if that's 30% of your income, you got to have like a pretty high paying, job to affordably have, that property. And so, and not, that's not even talking about buying a house because that like
And I
mortgage
mean, I
price.
know it's a huge topic of discussion, and
Yeah.
but just to be clear, it is also something all three levels of government have to work on
Oh,
together.
yeah.
It is
100%.
not, it is, for all our viewers, it is not, housing is not a municipal issue strictly. It is
Yes. Oh,
definitely,
yeah.
yeah, it is definitely something that your local council and mayor can work on and work with you, but this is a Canada-wide, actually, I mean, it's a North America-wide problem, although Canada is doing worse
Or
in the
worldwide,
US.
honestly, New Zealand,
Yes.
Australia, prices are pretty high for houses. They,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think
So
and that
please, I
is
have
true.
realistic expectations. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying to the public.
Yeah, like we can't
Yeah,
obviously as a city. And I actually made this mistake in my community TV interview. I said I meant to say provincially. Rent control is provincially controlled, not municipally controlled. I accidentally said municipally controlled, but yeah, like rent controls, rental caps, things like that are set by the province, and we're the largest province without a limit on how much rent can be raised per year.
correct.
And so, that's something that I think, in terms of those kind of changes, I think really council, all they can do is advocate as best they can for our community and for making things more affordable,
Well,
both
I think
provincially and federally.
how the municipality and the city council and mayor can really help with that is making it easy for building projects to happen, and
Yeah, whether it
that's
be
the biggest.
development
Yeah,
fees, development fees or things like that, whatever the municipality can do to make building homes easier,
yeah.
they need to be doing. Or whether that be zoning, things like that. I mean, the city can, or the council controls zoning. One thing I'd kind of like to see is just a more diverse, like land lot size, and just maybe more diverse options for housing in Medicine Hat. We need housing of all types. We don't just need houses. We need
Yes.
affordable housing. We need 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Single family homes, things like that. Even bigger homes for the people that want them. Um,
You could go
but
on the Home Depot's website and order a mini home for
Yeah,
$19,000. Do you know
yeah.
that?
Well, it's true. Yeah, or Amazon. You can do
Yeah,
the same thing.
right. You
Yeah,
can order them on Amazon. They come on a
I
truck and they
know.
plop them there and then press the button and they
Yeah.
all pop out. And holy
Right.
cow.
I'm sure, the building codes, who knows what those are for those.
Yeah.
But no, I do think that I would like to see more diverse options for housing, whether that be like half lot sizes. Cause, my wife and I, we don't need a massive, 3,000 square foot home. Like I would like, smaller houses, options for the people that want them. Cause that is maybe one way that, you could make buying a home more affordable is making some more kind of diverse choices in some of the zoning, or apartment building co-ops is another option that would be a cool initiative to see happen in
I
Medicine
want
Hat.
to own a big, spacious home, says nobody who has ever lived outside North America. I
Yeah,
have
right.
lived in
Yeah,
another country for 4 years, and let me tell you, the concept of this massive house where you have tons of room to move around is not something people talk about in Europe. It is not. They're squished
well,
together in little homes for the most part.
yeah, well, anytime I see someone with like a really, and like, unless you have a real big fan, like I said, some people do need that space, and that's fine. But like right now, it's just my wife and I and our little one. It's like a massive house that's got 5 bedrooms. It's like, okay, I don't want to vacuum that much. I don't want to mow that huge lawn, So it's, I think there is a market out there for like
Yes, I
smaller
agree.
options, or just more options in general. But I think that one of the main kind of points of my platform that I'd like addressed, that there isn't, like I said, we talked about rent controls and things like that, but I think there is something the city can do. I feel like there is, and not just in this city, in all cities right now, but particularly in Medicine Hat, there is a bit of sort of unethical, I would say, kind of landlord practices happening. There's a lot of people that are landlords that maybe they own 1, 2 buildings across the city, and that's great, and they're great landlords. Like I have a landlord that we rent. I have a landlord that's very accessible and very responsive, and I believe charges a fair price for what we have. And I do enjoy my landlord, but a lot of people in Medicine Hat really aren't so lucky. Um, I feel like a large chunk of the kind of apartment style housing in Medicine Hat is really controlled by not that many people. And, I think that sometimes that can create some pretty poor living conditions. Like I've heard a lot of stories from people I've talked to that deal with pests or safety issues, or across the board, where there are common space maintenance, things like that. And like I said, rent control, things like that, municipally, we can't really do a lot. But I do think that there is things that the city can do to address some of those issues, because there's a lot of people that live in Medicine Hat that are having to deal with that, and I don't think it's fair. And I think that municipally something could be done for sure.
All right. Any other things on your platform? I intentionally do not read the candidates' platforms ahead of time
Oh,
because,
cool. Okay, no,
yeah,
that's all
no,
good. So that
I
covers kind of
like
the
I said, this
housing.
is like a Joe Rogan thing. Just sit down
All
and
right.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. So yeah, that kind of covers my views on housing, like I said. But I think the second part of my platform that I've talked a lot about is transit. My wife and I, we did working holidays in both Australia and New Zealand. And where we lived in New Zealand, not quite as much, but where we lived in Australia, their public transit system was like incredible. Like it was like a well-oiled machine. I took public transit every single day to work. It was efficient, it was fast, it was reliable, it was affordable. And like after living there, I'm not a person that in Medicine Hat, like I've always had a vehicle, so I've never, really done
Have you been
a
to
ton.
Banff?
I have been to Banff. I've done a little bit of the public
Okay.
transit in Banff, but not since they've made some changes recently. Most public transit I took in Banff was kind of before some of those changes.
Yeah. Their
But
public
yeah,
transit system's amazing in Banff.
yeah, and I definitely think that there is things in Medicine Hat that we could do to make our public transit more accessible, more affordable, and just like a better kind of tool for the job. Like right now, I think we just have this kind of general framework that they've created that doesn't kind of stray too far from the norm. And I think there's definitely things that the city could do, like the ride and rec pass we just had. I thought that was a great program that they used. That got used a ton. Like from what I hear, it was very like popular. And I think right now, outside of programs like that, a lot of people that use public transit in Medicine Hat, it's like that. It's because they have to. It's not because they want to, or because it's like, oh, you know what, we'll take the bus today. It's because they have to. And I think that making transit medicine more accessible and more efficient and just more desirable for people would encourage people to use it more, and that would have far-reaching, I think, benefits to the city in terms of traffic. Like you want to talk about traffic easing, things like that. The most affordable and the most efficient way for traffic easing, in my opinion, is utilizing public transit effectively. Honestly,
There are some
um,
cities that have moved to a free transit platform, and they've had. I was reading up on them a couple of weeks ago, and I think I'll do some posts on it now that we're talking about
mhm.
it. And they've had enormous success with completely basically saying all buses are free.
Right. And I think that that is something, obviously, there's like financial,
Yes.
considerations with that. Like, the last thing I'm sure some people want the city to do is start spending more money. But it's one of those things where the benefits might outweigh the cost in that situation. Obviously, I don't know the exact financials behind it, but things like that is definitely something that I think the city could look into. Because I'm sure transit's not a massive money maker already. Like I'm sure that it's a net loss no matter what the city does. But I think
I'd have
that,
to look up the exact numbers, which I will actually post during this interview right
oh,
around
cool.
now.
Oh, nice. Right
And
here. Yeah, no.
yeah, right
Yeah,
up there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And
there you
but
go.
I believe, if I am not mistaken, when I was an active part of things like that, the city was actually taking a loss on it every year.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
it was money they had to spend to keep the transit system running. It was not profitable.
right. And I think that's probably very common.
Yes,
See, I doubt there's any public transit in the
I
country that's
agree
profitable.
completely.
But again, it's one of those things where it's kind of, is it worth the investment? I think it's definitely something that can be looked at because, these last few years, especially, I know anytime I drive across the city, it's like, man, the traffic, it is like, it's crazy. Like there's so many cars on the road.
Yeah, we have
And
rush hour now. We didn't a
oh,
few
I know.
years ago.
It's insane.
Just in
Like
the last 3 years, we have a rush hour now. Like
I know
what?
it is pretty wild
I used to
actually.
make
And
jokes about
yeah,
rush hour here, but now we have a rush hour. It's not so funny.
there's times where my wife and I like we'll be driving somewhere. Like I might have the day off and we'll drive somewhere. It'll be like Tuesday at 2 p.m. and we're driving and there's just so much traffic. I'm like, man, like what is everybody like? How is there this much traffic? Like it's crazy. So I think that obviously people should be able to like drive all they want. Like that's fine. But I think that encouraging people and getting people to use public transit more would be a huge way to get people off the road. And I think that, like I said, the ride and rec pass was a good example for programs like that. I would like to see something specifically geared towards seniors in Medicine Hat. Like right now, we have the special transit that you have to kind of qualify for, as far as I am aware, and then we have the transit on demand. But the transit on demand does not cover uh, south of Dunmore Hill. Like right now, once you where is pretty much where all the senior facilities are. The transit on demand does not cover any of that. It covers downtown in one, and then it covers North Crescent Heights in another. So I would like to see, and then you need an app. And the last thing, like I'm sure a senior citizen is going to want to do is fumble with some app to try to book a public transit. But I'd like to see partnerships with, some of the senior living facilities in Medicine Hat, and whether it's a schedule or whether it's a booking thing, whatever it is. Like I think it would be very well utilized. Because a lot of these senior facilities, there's seniors in there that they don't love driving, they don't, or maybe they've got health
Or they
conditions, they
can't
can't
drive.
drive,
Yep.
yeah, anymore. And I think that it would be something that would be very well utilized, and it
That's
would
a
get
that's a good segue into a constant conversation I hear in Medicine Hat is we're losing our young people, and they
mm,
come back to in their 40s, 50s, and 60s
to
once they have
retire.
families
Yeah,
to retire, and
yeah.
it is in itself a problem, right? But at the same time, I am huge advocate for seniors.
Hmm.
I do not like how we treat our senior citizens. I think it's disgusting. And it's kind of in the past now, I guess, but not that far behind where I don't know how many we lost during COVID. We should be ashamed of
Mm.
ourselves as a society. We really should.
Well,
It was
yeah.
horrible the way we treat our seniors, but at the same time, it's a constant balancing act. So where do you find a middle ground between not losing our young people and still honoring the people who paved the path for us and not saying, "Hey, you're old now. Go sit in your senior care home and don't bother us," because I know a lot of
Yeah.
seniors feel that way too.
Well, yeah, like I said, and seniors, there's definitely a large population of seniors in Medicine Hat that obviously are an important part of Medicine Hat. And I do think, yeah, like I'll tell you this, you talk about an affordability crisis. One of the first populations that suffer the most in an affordability crisis is senior citizens. They are on a fixed income, whether it be, a pension or whatever it is. And the more and more things get expensive, the harder these seniors are hit because they can't just go out and find a new job. They are in a fixed income. And so I think trying to address some of the affordability things as much as the city can is important for seniors. But yeah, like I think that gearing something like transit towards seniors is very, very important. But I think attracting young families to both stay and move to Medicine Hat is also, very important in my opinion, because with young people and young families will come more business and more tax revenue, things like that. So and I think one of the ways we can do that is, I think that in terms of that's a third part of my platform, I guess is a good segue, is focusing on economic development. And specifically, I think in the past, and I do think this is important, obviously, attracting big business in Medicine Hat, these big fish, all that stuff. But, a lot of times I think a lot of, money and time and, tax incentives and things like that are spent trying to attract these, massive operations, and they don't necessarily give the best jobs. Lots of times it's ask anyone that works in like a big, pack facility or anything like that. It's not necessarily the best paying jobs, the most secure jobs. We had the big Aurora facility that kind of went nowhere.
Looks
So I do,
beautiful just sitting there in the setting
yeah,
sun,
it looks
doesn't it?
great. Yeah, so but I think that so I do think we should try obviously to attract bigger businesses because we do, need the jobs. There's an unemployment crisis happening, but a big part of the unemployment crisis is young people. Between like they say, 14 and 30, and I think that a good thing to focus on with economic development would be kind of fostering and kind of supporting small and medium-sized businesses in Medicine Hat, both attracting them, new ones here, and new ones to expand that are already here. We have a lot of great small businesses in Medicine Hat, and they're the ones they hire a lot of young people. They have a lot of the really good paying jobs in the city, or they're people working for themselves, young entrepreneurs, things like that. And not only in that regard, but also a lot of these businesses that operate in Medicine Hat that are small businesses, they're the kind of things that make living in Medicine Hat really cool. Like we've got a lot of cool breweries. We've got, a lot of these small businesses are fun things to do. And
I've
so
seen
I
a
think
lot of complaints from residents about business licenses that have doubled and tripled in the last 4 or 5 years in
that doesn't
cost.
surprise me. Yeah.
And I've
Or
seen I that's a very good point because I think, there should be some sort of it shouldn't be a blanket like if you're doing retail sales or online sales or electronics repair, there should be a
yeah.
difference between if you're doing it out of a retail store, if you're doing it out of your house. I don't think it should be
Yeah.
the same charge for every level, right?
Well, and not only that, but you like I've heard a lot of talk, and I'm starting to learn more and more about things like off-site levies and things like that. Like a small business trying to pay the off-site levy of starting a new like business, like on a new development, things like that, that can kill a small or medium-sized business trying to pay that. So whether that be offsetting it or whatever it is, because like multi-million dollar project that comes in, sometimes they don't even blink at charges like that. But a small, medium-sized, locally owned business that could kill a locally owned business. And I understand things like that need to get paid, but doing whatever you can, whether that offsetting or helping out or things like that. Um, and the city, we have a lot of cool, like we have Community Futures, Entrepreneur, Medicine Hat that a lot of small business owners aren't even aware of programs like that. So I think the city doing whatever it can to connect people with some of the programs and some of the grant funding and some of the things like that to
I
help.
was going to say the exact same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, like to help start some of those small, medium-sized businesses, because those are the businesses I think that, like I said, it's great to attract big business, but in terms of a big, packing facility that starts up in Medicine Hat, does that make living in Medicine Hat like more fun, or is that attracting residents to move to Medicine Hat for recreationally or things like that? I don't think that it does. I've grown up in I've lived in Medicine Hat a long time, and it seems like I said this in an interview the other day. I feel like for a lot of my life, it was like, well, what do you guys want to do tonight? Well, we can go bowling or we can go to a bar. And that's about it.
Yes. As much as, a lot of people when they get older find things like that silly, younger
Yeah.
people like excitement. If there isn't, they are going to be more inclined to leave. So,
Yeah. Well, and
you know,
just like I said, things to do. Like younger people,
yes,
they're going to bars less and less. And I think that if we want to attract young people and young families to this city, we need things that are going to attract them like that. Things to do.
correct.
Like there's a new business. I can't remember what it's called, but my wife and I saw it. It's right by the lab where the old Sport Check used to be. And it's one of those kind of like play cafes it's going in.
Yes, I now okay, I've seen ads for it online and
Yeah.
I even joined their page. And
Oh,
then
there
I
you go.
lost track of it. I haven't seen it
And as
haven't seen
someone that
information on it since.
Well, and just like things like that, like someone that just has a new child, it's like my wife and I saw that and we were like, yes, like that is the kind of things that we need more of in
Yes.
Medicine Hat. And so businesses like that can be very hard to run without support. And it doesn't necessarily have to be financial support directly from the city, because I obviously understand, the city can't just fund things outright, but they can make things easier for people to start businesses like that and run businesses like that. And I think those are the businesses that I think are going to attract young families. And I think that for me, if I were to get elected on council, I think that maybe that's a perspective I could offer. Is like I said, I'm not an expert by any means on macroeconomics or anything, but I definitely think I can give a bit of a perspective for maybe young. Well, I'm not super young, but younger families, I should
$30
say.
million. That's what the utility rebate was that they gave out to alleviate approximately 30 million, maybe 33. I can't remember the exact number. And I looked that up and I'm thinking, boy, that would have built an entire recreation facility
Yeah,
for
well,
young people. And so I don't know which would have been better. I guess it depends on public opinion, but
and so the utility, well, and like I said, it is a bit of a balancing act, because
yeah.
this utility rebate, like I had a meeting, I've had some meetings with some of the community programs that we have in the city, and they basically told me that anytime taxes go up or utilities go up, they see a marked increase in use of, like, whether it be the food bank or things like that that community supports. And so, it is a bit of a balancing act where it is important to reduce costs across the board, obviously. But I do think that there's things that can be done to fund or support at least different programs in the city. And I do think you're right. I think there's definitely some incentives, whether it be tax incentives or grants or things like that, that do go out to some of these bigger companies that don't necessarily need it. And I think that, in terms of economic development, a lot of these times we bend over backwards to get these big businesses here. We give them all the sweetheart deals in the world, and they would have moved here anyway. Or they move here and then 5 years later they go, yeah, you know what, we're leaving. And it's like, okay, like all that money that went towards this, I think there needs to be some accountability in terms of economic development of, okay, if we're going to spend $30 million or whatever it is, or give you all these tax incentives, how many full paying or full time jobs are you going to create from that? It
Yes.
shouldn't just be like I hear a lot of talk about these yeah, AI centers or quantum computing centers and things like that, and people are kind of foaming at the mouth to get these things to Medicine Hat. And I understand there's definitely tax revenue that can come from that, but how many people are these buildings that are normally run on skeleton crews really going to hire?
Damage
You know,
control. That's all it
it
is.
honestly, and
That's
so I
all the rebate is damage control. They're band-aids.
yeah, and so I think that the city, in terms of economic development funding directly or just support directly, could I think be better utilized in some cases towards small and medium sized businesses because you know I think that those are the businesses in Medicine Hat that, like I said, they're locally owned and they're the things that make living in Medicine Hat desirable to people. And I think that the more we have program or businesses like that, and the more fun things we have to do, and the more cool businesses we have, whether they be retail or tourism or recreation or whatever it is, restaurants, I think that more people will want to move here. And then that tax revenue and that some of those entrepreneurs that will move here, I think will get a bit of return on investment for things like that.
That's very well said.
Sorry, that
Yeah.
was really long winded, but yeah,
No,
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
do you know what? I actually don't think I've done an interview yet where people are not long-winded.
Ah, well,
It comes with aspiring to be a politician. Sorry, but generally
well,
we don't say things in short form.
yeah, and I
You
think
know,
that
it's true.
I do. That's why I really wanted to do like a podcast style interview. And because I do think that it's really hard to. I'm kind of new to trying to like sell myself, I should say, and it's really hard in like a 5 minute interview or like an interview for like
Yeah.
the newspaper. To kind of sell yourself because a lot of people we say the same things. It's like, oh, I'm good at communicating, or I'm good at teamwork, or whatever it is,
Transparency.
right? Accountability, yeah. And
Yes.
it's like, what does that really mean? I
Oh,
think
yeah.
for me, I was like, I wanted to do a more of a long form interview where it's like people can kind of get to know me a little bit as best I can, and maybe get a just kind of a peek inside how my brain works. And I think like if as I'm a voter as well, like I think that's more important when I'm
You
voting for
live here
people.
too.
Yeah, I think when
Yes.
I'm voting for people, I want to see how their brain works a little bit. I don't want to see, buzzwords or, just this well manicured thing, posts about what their plans are. Like, I kind of want to just get to know them a little bit.
During the
And I think
last
this,
campaign, that was a huge complaint from the public. And I'm
mm,
seeing a lot of the first timers around make the same mistakes, which
yeah,
I think anybody who ran already, like myself, knows that using those buzzwords
yeah.
don't
Synergy. Yeah.
don't work. People are
Yeah.
tired of hearing accountability
Yeah.
and transparency because they don't understand what it means. They
Well,
don't
and they're
want to
not
hear it
stupid. They see
anymore.
right, and they're not. The public is not stupid. They see right through it
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They understand that everyone's going to say the same thing, and so
It's
that's why
not
I'm
that it's a
really
lie. They just want an expanded explanation and they
a bit
know
more detail about how you're going
exactly.
to, be a good
Yes.
communicator or whatever it is. And so that's why, I'm trying my best with my campaign to get out there as much as I can. I'm going to try to do as many events as I can in terms of meet and greets or interviews like this, and community events. Like I was a little late to get a table at the Grain to Glory Festival, unfortunately. I would have loved to jump on that trend, but I did go and I kind of talked to as many people as I could and just kind of introduced myself. But I really, enjoy face to face stuff like that. And I think that I'm going to try my best to do as many long form or as many face to face communication styles as I can because, a lot of times, and I'm doing it myself, I'll kind of manicure a bit of a post on what my ideas are, but I don't think people respond as much to that as
Well,
they
there's
do.
definitely a communications deficit problem.
Mm,
And it is I've lived in about 8 or 9 different cities, and I
mm,
can tell you out of all the cities I've lived in as an adult, since I've been aware of what politics is, because there's a certain age where you just don't care, where we were all there. But
yeah.
this city has a massive communications deficit between its municipal government and its people.
Mm,
And it has been like that since I moved here in 2009, where the general
yeah.
public doesn't know what's going on. They know everything happening provincially. They know everything Donald Trump says,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
well,
you
don't we
know,
all? Yeah.
but then when they narrow the street on Division Avenue, it's like the world is crashing around down around them because they didn't know what was happening, and it was just crammed down their throats last minute, and
Mhm.
there's a communications problem, and I don't know,
I think that,
fix it.
yeah, well, yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah.
That's right.
And I do think that that is why, there is an argument to make counselors full time. Whether that is something in the future of the city, I don't really know. But, the council being part time, I understand it's probably a little difficult to manage working full time and being a city councilor because you can't go to every single event. You can't, be out every single day meeting with people. But I would support, and I would like to see maybe some like dedicated office hours for certain, council members, like whether they split it up by day or whatever it is, or more town halls. I know that town halls, sometimes can be not the most productive thing in the world, but I do think that it is important to, maybe have some town halls or have some, like I said, some kind of more social events, meet and greets, get out there in the public and chat with people, and I understand it is hard to be the decision maker and then have to own those decisions, but I think that that's just part of the job. And I think that that is one of the arguments for making council full time, is that council would have more time to spend on things like that. Whether I'd fully support full time counselors, I'd have to learn more about it. But
And you'd have to see
I
what the offer was and what it looked like. Absolutely.
well, and the last thing I'm sure a lot of constituents want is the city to spend more money on counselors. So I understand that that might not be feasible for this city quite yet, but I do think that part of being a counselor is, you definitely have to be accountable for your decisions that you make, and that's why, again, if I was to make it on council, I would try my best to learn as much as I possibly can about every single agenda item and every single decision that came to the table, because I would have to own those decisions and I would have to defend those to people. And like I said, there's some decisions that I know I would make that I know some people would disagree with. But that's okay. That's just a difference of opinion, and that's inevitable. That's going to happen. But I think that being more communicative, I should say, in your messaging, and like I said, a town hall or a meet and greet, things like that are important. On the
Usually
flip side,
in the middle. Sorry, go ahead. No,
sorry,
finish your thought.
on the flip side of that, though, I do think that, and I might get some hate for saying this, I do think the public does need to take some accountability as
I
well
agree.
in some of the toxicity out there. I mean, and I'm sure you've understood that there's a lot of, whether you go on a social media comment or go to some of these town halls, it's not a totally one-sided
No.
argument. There is
Listen
definitely,
instead of react.
well, yeah, there is a
Yep.
bit of, accountability on the public's part, that they have
Yep.
to understand that, a person isn't running for city council to get rich. I mean, maybe somebody is, but if they are, not doing, you,
That's
you know,
the long, wrong
the
road.
row, right? Yeah, but I think that the people, if they're running for city council, it's because it at least if I think it would be out of a general, desire to make this city a better place to live and more affordable place to live. And I think that they have to understand the council, you know, current council, that's a different story right now in terms of some of the things that are going on. But I do think they have to understand that council is doing their best usually, and no matter what. And I think that someone running for council is doing it out of a desire to make the city better
Yes.
for everybody. And
Well said. Thank you.
I think that the public is not completely off the hook for some of the toxicity that happens in politics, and whether that's because of a larger partisanship it's happening, or reactionary media, or whatever the cause is for that. I think that you just have to kind of stop and think sometimes, like,
There are a
is what
lot
I'm
of there are a lot of people who genuinely think that when somebody like you or I runs for council, that the moment we get elected, we walk through this morphing thing and turn and come out a monster on the other side. People
well,
really do think that.
yeah. Yeah, and and there's definitely, like, you see it in some of the conspiracy theories that I
Oh
see
my
kind of
God.
touted, that it's like, out there that, it's like city council. It's like their goal is to make some police state or something, and it's kind of crazy, honestly, in my opinion, to see some of that, and then to have the same sect of people kind of turn around and be like, council isn't operating fairly and honestly, and I think that that's just not professional. And it's like, well, they're they have to put up with a lot of heat no matter what they do, and I think that obviously council needs to be accountable for their decisions and for their actions, but I think that the public does need to understand that some of the positivity does need to come from your side as well, and from our side, I
Realistic
should say.
expectations.
Well, yeah, realistic expectations, and just a positive sense of community comes from all sides. And I think that it's not just a city council can't just create a positive sense of community and put it out in the public and let it happen. I think the public needs to take an active role in making
Being
a
part
city.
of the team
Well,
is a good way to
yeah, they
put it.
are, because
Yeah.
the public is a part of the team, and they hire the council with their votes.
Yes.
And so, and so obviously council needs to be responsible for that, but also the public needs to know that they're hiring council based on what they perceive as their values and how good of a job they do. But the public is also a member of that team. So I
Yep.
think that, like I said, I might get some hate for saying that, but I
I
do
come
believe
well,
that.
then I'm sharing the hate with you
Well,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't endorsed anybody, but you're about this close if you make that
Okay,
comment
well,
again. Really,
yeah, well,
it's true. I'm just
mhm,
the general public needs to take some responsibility for their own actions and asking loaded questions and throwing a rock before you get an answer. And then when you get an answer that's contrary to what you were looking for, instead of screaming people are lying to you, stop and listen. It's
yeah.
just it's got to stop.
Or even just like the spread of misinformation, like obviously, I think clear messaging is important from council. And that's why when I talked about in my community TV interview, I said some of those in-camera meetings and behind closed doors, I said I do think there is a place sometimes for some of those behind closed doors meetings, solely just so that council can kind of get their messaging right, and how they're going to present that to the public. Because if they present information in a confusing way or in a kind of a jumbled way, that's how misinformation kind of does start
Yes.
and get spread. I don't think decisions should happen behind closed doors, obviously, but I do think that there is something to be said about getting on the same page as a team before you put some, information or agenda items or whatever out to the public. And I
That
think that
and some
there's a
things are
place for
just
that.
private. You're not privy to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely
Yep.
like freedom of information stuff. That's another thing I said, is like whether it be, personal information, economic, or sorry, employment information, whatever it is. But I do think that decisions should be made in public, obviously, because you're accountable for them at the end of the day. But I think, yeah, the misinformation, some of the spread of misinformation is unfortunate to see sometimes, because it can sour, you know, decisions that need to be made. Like I see it all the time. There's misinformation that kind of gets spread, and then in the comments, it's like, oh no, this isn't true, and then it makes it kind of hard for someone that doesn't know who to believe here. Like so I
Well,
think
you've
it
been
took
reading
me.
my posts.
Yeah, well, your posts. I mean, there's definitely some other posts out there where I see a comment of like, "Oh, we spent this amount on this," and I go, "What?" I was like, "The city spent." I saw one that said the city spent $600 million on a certain project, and I said, "What? $600 million?" And it said, "Yeah, we spent that." And I look it up, and of course, that's not true. And I said, "If
No.
we spent $600 million on a project,
We'd
the
be
city
bankrupt.
we would be bankrupt." Yes.
Yeah.
So
What?
yeah, and so I said, and so I think it just takes a bit of research on people's part to, when they see something like that get put out there, whatever it is, just try to do a little bit of research yourself, and maybe just ask someone that knows a bit more about it. Like I said, there's a
And
lot of experts
yeah,
in our
and
community.
not only that, but when you see those posts or when you're on my posts, instead of just saying you're wrong, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, add comments to it,
Mm,
add context to it,
yeah.
and add clarification and add your side of the information and clarify it. People do
Hmm.
read comments instead of
Yeah.
just going on an ad hominem attack because it's not
Hmm.
productive. That's why we call you
No.
internet trolls.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's true.
it is. You're right, though. It is not productive. It's actually counterproductive
Yes,
to,
absolutely.
getting things done. And because the more kind of art, like there's certain projects where it's kind of all the information and all the research says, oh, this would be a great thing for the city. Yet some of the information seeps in, and all of a sudden, some people are like really against it because they think it's going to happen or a certain way, and then that's why projects take sometimes forever, because it is important to have the public's input. But when some of those things are misinformed, it just getting things done kind of takes a sideline in that regard,
Yeah.
and it just makes things happen slower. And then people complain about things not happening, and they're happening slower. And it's like, well, it is tough. But the one
Just
I was reading your post was about the arena, and there was a lot I didn't know about
yes.
the old arena. Um, about how basically is from what I was reading is like basically it's not great shape, and anyone going in there would effectively have to demolish it. And
I
so
believe that is a requirement for anybody who purchases the lot. It is
well, yeah, and I read that in your post there that it was kind of part of a purchase agreement that it's kind of like, yeah, you basically have to demolish it. And I was under, and I've heard that out in the public that people say like, no, building's great, like someone could just buy it and put X Y Z in there, and then I find out that's not true. And so, like I said, there's a lot of different information coming from so many different sources. I understand it is hard for anybody in the public to kind of weed that out and know what's right and what's not. But I do think that we all have to take a bit of accountability in trying to learn. If we're going to have that strong of opinion on something, we should at least try to learn all the facts as best we can.
and you know what? Even then, sometimes people can be wrong. Doesn't make them a liar. Doesn't make them a
Mm,
conspiracy.
yeah.
Part of a conspiracy. It's
Yep.
sometimes people just make mistakes and they're wrong, and
Yeah, that's
that's
true.
on them to
Well,
say, I'm
and
sorry, but
also, yeah, and also sometimes there's not a right or a wrong answer. There's just
that's
two
right.
different ways to get something done.
Correct.
And some people have an opinion that it would be best done this way. Some people have an opinion it would be best done that way. And so that's why there's a council of 9 people, because I think that council should, it should be diverse. I think there should be a lot of different types of people on council. It should be kind of like a cross section of the Alberta resident or the Medicine Hat residents, because I think that's the best way to get a bit of a consensus on some of this decision making. And then that's why they vote. There's sometimes the vote goes one way, sometimes the vote goes other way. And I think that that's why we have a team, and that's why we have a council vote on things, is because there isn't a clear cut way to get things done sometimes, and that's okay, because sometimes things it's not a for sure one way or the other. So
Thank you. No, that's well said. I completely agree. So I am going to closing. We're going to start closing here, and I've
sure,
got
yeah,
one question that I want to ask about what's going on with council right now and Mayor Lindsay Clark, and
right.
that is an absolute mess, and I don't think
Hmm.
anybody can deny that. And I made a post where a lot of them were estimates. I did obtain FOIP records where I
Mm.
pulled a lot of the financials and legal fees that had been spent, and then I calculated estimates. And at the moment, we're probably looking, a rough guess would be like $300,000 of taxpayers' dollars have gone to this dispute
Hmm.
since it
Yeah.
started. So, I, closing comments, take it away. What do you think?
Well, it is a tough situation because I do think that there's a lot of things that we have not been privy to that, it's tough for me to give a definite opinion on something when I don't have all the facts.
Yep.
So, but as a resident and as a voter, obviously it's a bit of a gong show, where, with when you start to see national news or whatever it is, articles come out about like, wow, look at, how crazy this is going on. And I've watched the meetings where some of this stuff went down. And I think that it is unfortunate that this, us taxpayers have had to spend that much money on a personal dispute, basically, which it really all boils down to.
Yep.
And I think that, like I said, it's hard to kind of take whether there's one side or the other. I don't think anyone's uh, innocent in this whole debacle, I should say. I think there's definitely, kind of behavior on both sides that I wouldn't necessarily agree with. But I think moving forward, I think that the next council, I think moving through conflict is going to be a major, major asset
Conflict
for the next
resolution. Thank you.
conflict resolution because, and
Yes.
I definitely think that with the current CAO, they're hired by the council. Um, and as far as I'm aware, it was done by selection process last time, which, whatever the cost is there. I think it would, for the next council, maybe be tough to kind of move forward with all of the same members of staff, I should say, that were kind of involved in some of this. Especially when you have a municipal report that comes out that says that some of the things that were in that report, saying the level of toxicity among the staff and the municipal staff, because the CAO, they are the peak manager of the city and all the staff.
The
And
easiest way
if
to explain that, to sort of cut you off, would be
yeah, yeah,
they are the head of the corporation of Medicine Hat.
right, yes,
That's
they
the
are the
easiest way to
yes.
explain that for the
And
public.
so
Yes.
if someone is running a business and a report comes, not that the city should be run like a business exactly, but I'm just saying like operationally, when the leader in an organization and a report comes out that's quite as scathing as the one that came out, there's definitely some responsibility that has to be put on that role, obviously. So that's definitely something I think next council should take greatly into consideration, and what is being done to kind of fix some of that, some of those relationships and some of that, culture among city staff. So that's the one side. And then that being said, council, they're the ones that hire the CAO and they're the ones that basically are the manager of the CAO. So I definitely think that obviously there's some part to play of council in terms of kind of what went on. But yeah, I think that it'll be interesting to see if there's any incumbents that want to kind of continue on in this election. But I think without having all the information and some of the things that happen kind of behind closed doors, it is tough to make a definite this person was wrong, this person was right.
I see
Um,
nothing wrong with that position personally of not being willing to take a side.
yeah,
I
because
know that a lot of people are very, very big on choose a side, pick a side, but I am very much like you, although I have picked a side in this argument.
okay,
I
what are your thoughts? I'd be interested to hear.
My thoughts are that the way we treated Mayor Lindsay Clark was disgusting.
Mm.
It was disgusting, and it came down to inflated egos where we should have, regardless of whether the initial meeting where this all blew up was
Which
warranted.
I did watch that meeting, and
Yeah,
like when it kind of happened, I just kind of was like,
she lost her temper. She was calm and she was
yeah,
well spoken, but you could tell she was
mhm,
angry, and
yeah,
it probably was not the right setting for it. And I agree that stopping it was the right thing to do, but the
mm,
escalation afterwards didn't need to be done. It didn't need to turn into this. We can.
yeah,
It's okay to take a step back and take a deep breath and let
mm,
things go. And when you have
yeah.
people who
I could,
can't let
yeah.
anything go, then this is the only outcome.
I definitely, yeah, definitely could agree with that for sure. Like, I think that conflict on a council is inevitable. Like in any scenario like that where big decisions are being made, conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. But I think the ability to move through that conflict in a positive way and kind of let things go like that is important because, as we can see, it can really sour later, relations. And I think that, yeah, I could agree with that for sure. Like I said, it's tough to say without all the information, but I think that, and then in terms of the legal fees, and like I said, people might disagree with me on this, but I think if there's two sides in an argument, both sides aren't necessarily right or not necessarily wrong, and there was kind of misjudgment on both sides. I think that if they're going to pay for one person's legal fees, which you've already done, why would you not pay for the other person's? Like, because then you're clearly taking a side.
Yeah, and it's not always all about business and
Mm,
approaching things from a transactional standpoint, which
yeah,
is how I felt a lot of this was approached. I don't care if she was elected as a mayor and she needs to be held accountable, which I agree she does, but
yeah,
what we didn't do that to Lindsay Clark. We
mm,
destroyed her. And
Well,
and I don't mean us as a whole. I mean, this whole thing destroyed her. Like I spoke to her recently, and
mhm,
the topic of our conversation, I'm not gonna release because
mm,
whatever her and I say to each other
that's
is
all good, man.
private. But
Hmm.
I can tell you, body language wise, I
Mm.
felt horrible for her. She's gun shy at this point, and damn, I don't blame her.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
sucks what we've done to her.
and even in that municipal report that came out, I believe it did say the actions that were taken afterwards against Mayor Clark were a bit heavy-handed, as far as I
Yes,
remember.
absolutely. It was
And
horrible.
so, yeah, so I definitely think that there's misjudgment, I think, on both sides there, and we don't have all the information, obviously, but I think that situations like that, I think, are not something that can happen because since then, how much has really got done since then? I think it's really hurt their ability to get things done since that's all happened, which has been what 2 years now,
Yeah,
since
it's
it
got to be
happened,
over 2 years.
which is half the term. And so I think that I don't think there should have been any legal fees that coming into it at all. I think that they need to work through this conflict internally, and I think they need to move through conflict like that much more efficiently, and just not let things like that happen. Honestly.
There's been a lot of comments on the posts I've made regarding this from people, and they're very smart
Mm.
comments about the untold amount of loss the city has taken from people who have walked away from doing business here because of this.
Well, there's something to be
It's
said about that as well. Yeah,
yeah,
I
we'll
mean,
never
it's
know.
definitely,
It's got
yeah.
to be some substantial amount of damage, though. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and I think that that was another, one of the other kind of reasons I ran this for this election is because I knew, what I said, people are going to be kind of looking for a change. I feel like I'm, kind of a lot different than anyone that's on council right now. And I think that now could be a good time to put my name forward and try to, help the next council as best I can kind of get through some of this.
You have approximately 3 minutes. Closing thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. Well, moving forward, like I said, I'm going to try to get out in the community as best I can for the next few weeks. Try to meet as many people as I can. Learn as much as I can. More importantly, there's a lot of information out there. I'm trying to learn about this city. Some of it I knew already. Some of it I don't. Obviously, but I think more importantly, like I said, I'm just going to try to get out there as much as I can. Meet as many people as I can. Do stuff like this as best I can. And if people run into me out in public, feel free to come say hi. I'd be happy to chat with people or, talk about some of my ideas or hear some of their ideas on what they think I can do to, make things better in this city. And yeah, I look forward to the next few weeks before October 20th.
Could be as simple as posting comments on this video, and I'm sure you'll be happy to reply, right?
I will do my best.
We're in
Yeah,
the age
definitely.
of communication.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, for sure. And I will try. I will not use AI in any of my comments or anything like that. I promise. As an instructor, when I, come to mark things, sometimes that is clearly made in AI, I don't like it. I'll use it for spell check, maybe, and that's about as far as I go
I
with
use it
AI.
for spell check and sentence structure because
Yeah,
as much as I
yeah.
hate to admit it, I have all these amazing thoughts, and when they land in text format, they look like a 5-year-old wrote them. So I'm like, hey,
Well,
ChatGPT, write this so it sounds like
yeah.
somebody knew what they were
No,
talking about.
I pride myself on my, my writing ability and stuff like that. I write a mean
Not me.
cover
I'm all
letter.
verbal communication.
Oh, that's all
Yeah,
good. But no,
yeah.
it drives, as an instructor, it drives me nuts with AI all the time. So I'm like, I will not use AI to respond to people. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Politically Centered podcast. It was a wonderful interview. I enjoyed our time
Thank you
together.
so much for having me. It was a blast. Yeah. And I look forward to maybe talking to you again in the future.
Sounds good. You take care.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy.
This is a politically centered podcast.